Hello everybody and welcome to our first Nordic EY webinars here in Consumer following the holiday season. Hope you all came through it well and that you have not been too much caught up by this current COVID-19 situation we have. I'm Henrik Kramberg Iversen. I'm the leader for our consumer practice here in the Nordics for EY. And today we have the focus on the Omnichannel and especially the effect from Amazon and their activities and their approaches. It's highly relevant these days as Amazon is just about to launch here in the Nordics, so it'll be good to see what happens here. In terms of running these Teams call, I think most of us are getting quite experienced, but please use the raise the hand if you have questions, or just put it into the chat box and then we'll get back to it. But let me hand over to my very good colleague from Silicon Valley, Rai, who will take us through today's presentation and give you his insight on this highly relevant topic. Rai, handing over to you.
All right, thank you, Henrik. Appreciate that. Okay, thank you, everybody. I'd like to talk to you a little bit about the Amazon effect. You know, we've done a lot of work with every retailer and even outside of retailers, and what we find is that everybody kind of has the same question. Yeah, how am I going to compete with Amazon, or will Amazon become a threat, to my business? And I think the short answer is yes. It doesn't matter what business you're in. Amazon is affecting every business, from the retailers which they first competed with, all the way down to even companies like the big industrial companies like Dow Chemicals is afraid of Amazon coming in and starting to disrupt their own business. And I think we'll walk through some of that as we go through this presentation. But if you have questions, please raise your hand or just chime in. I think that'd be fine. Okay. Let me go to the next. So one of the big forces that are happening in around the world is two things. One is Amazon being able to provide capabilities that nobody has seen early on at scale, but also the consumer changing the way they changing their expectations, right? So they're expecting things to be more personalized. I don't want offers that are generic. I want offers that are made for me. I want visibility of the transaction that I place throughout. I want to be able to track the package. I want it delivered to my doorstep. I want a picture of it texted to me to prove that it was there. I want to shop anytime, anyway, anywhere. I want the package delivered anytime, anywhere. I want to buy it at home and delivered to my work, or vice versa, or I want to be able to shop online and have it delivered to home. So I want complete flexibility as I shop, and I expect high levels of service. I want things same day, next day, or I want very reliable service. I want something that's going to come when you tell me it's going to come. And I want it delivered the way I want it delivered, and delivered in the location that I want. Or maybe it's picked up in a locker. So my expectations of a consumer have been elevated tremendously. And that's been caused by two things. One, how Amazon has been able to show people that these capabilities are something that everybody can have. And the second is just the advancement of computers and the internet and adoption and people's comfort with being able to shop online. Okay, next one. Close off the screen. And then also what you'll see is what are things that Amazon is doing to really drive this, right? They're heightening expectations by making things very fast, same day, next day, even on weekends. I'm getting packages on a Sunday that I ordered Sunday morning. I'm getting it Sunday afternoon. And if I want to return something, the whole process is frictionless. They're dominating retail, 50% of the e-commerce market in the US that they own. Another fact about Amazon that other people aren't understanding is that they've become the largest search engine. They've surpassed Google in terms of product searches for items. If I want to find an item, I usually go right to Amazon and do a search. I can get good reviews, and then while I'm there, I might as well buy. They've expanded their categories to millions of SKUs, and they've done this through the marketplace, which is one of their fastest growing vehicles. So not only do they have 1 million SKUs in one distribution center, but they got 10 million SKUs out there in the market that you can get. So now you can buy things in every category. And then they created a huge loyalty program that's very sticky with their Prime program. So very, very powerful combination of factors that Amazon is bringing. Okay, maybe the next one. So how do we compete with them? Here's a handful of things that companies are doing, right? So they're expanding their networks. People like Walmart are adding multiple distribution centers, fulfillment centers to be able to compete with people like Amazon. They're also doing things like lighting up their stores. They're making pick by store a competitive advantage. Walmart, Macy's, a number of other companies, Lowe's in the U.S., Home Depot, are all picking from their stores because they know that's a way to compete with Amazon. They can, if they have 1,000 stores in the country, now that's 1,000 points that they can ship from. That's a way for them to compete with somebody who's got hundreds and hundreds of distribution centers across different regions. They're tapping into things like crowdsourcing to be able to use Uber and a number of other services to delivery to get things quickly to the customer. They're using advanced automation in their facilities. They're collaborating with multiple partners upstream and downstream to get some advantages. And they're figuring out ways to get things frictionless and tied to the customer stickiness. So loyalty programs, an example is a one-click app and I can do a replenishment of an item. And they're trying to expand their categories in assortment. So everybody like Walmart and others are pushing really hard on these marketplaces to try to compete with Amazon. Okay, next one. And when I talked about how everybody sees them as a threat, if you think about what companies are doing and what the trend is that's causing some of these disruptions is it's this blurring of retail. A customer doesn't understand a retail anymore. If you think about the big retailers, at least I can speak to in the US, Macy's, Walmart, Nordstrom, Home Depot, none of them are pure retailers anymore. Every one of them sells private label goods. In the example of Macy's, 30% of everything they sell is private label. So they became a vertical, right now they are a vertical manufacturing company that's also a retailer. So they've gone all the way upstream. And you've seen the same thing on every brand out there. It doesn't matter which brand they are, they've all started to become retailers. Every one of them has a website. Most have a flagship store. Some have whole chains of stores. So a whole concept of a retail store is blurred for the customer, and the customer doesn't really care. They just want to be able to order the item, and they don't care which channel it comes from, whether it comes from a department store or it comes from the brand itself or a third party. They want to have it. And you'll see on the bottom here how all of these companies are moving towards an omni-channel experience to be able to compete with Amazon. So they want to be able to provide that consumer that seamless interaction. The companies on the far right of that scale are the most advanced, and obviously the ones on the left are less advanced. But you'll see every one of these companies are trying to figure out a way to compete with Amazon. We've had Dow Chemicals, for example, come to us and say, how do I keep Amazon from selling my commodity products? Because once they own the customer, I become a commodity, and all I'm doing is providing products that Amazon now controls my customer and sells to. So that every one of them is trying to take their supply chains and make them faster and more nimble. Next one. You'll also see this in ways for people to compete. Everybody's putting in hard investment dollars to compete with them, and even Amazon is trying to push ahead. So on the left side, you see a lot of investment dollars spent by these companies, and that's to upgrade their systems, upgrade their facilities, light up their stores, all the different investments they're doing to compete in the omni-channel market. But on the right side, you'll also see there's a lot of acquisitions that's being made in order to be more competitive. Walmart went out and bought a number of companies, Flipkart in India, for example, to be able to leverage that market. Target, which is one of the best in the country at buy online and pick up in store. But Amazon is pushing the limits everywhere. So they bought Kiva, right, so that they can automate their facilities. They bought Whole Foods, so now they're getting into the retail space, going back to that blurring of retail. But they're also leveraging the Whole Foods stores, because now they have all these stores they purchased. They can take the stores and ship from those stores to customers, or they use the concept of what they call dark store. which is a store that was closed, and they would convert it into a mini distribution center, which tends to be right in the market. And then they bought PillPack to be able to sell pharmacy goods. They got a license in every state in the U.S. That sent shockwaves out there, and for the people like a CVS or a Walgreens that were selling pharmacy, knowing that Amazon is now knocking at their door very quickly. Next one. And so the retailers are trying to do a number of things in terms of services, right? So they're trying to give everybody better visibility and transparency, right? And when you place the order, I want to be able to see it, track it. I want to email, I want to text. I have pickup anywhere, anytime. I can pick up in a locker. I can use my cell phone to activate that locker. I can have it delivered to my home. I can have it delivered somewhere else. I want reliable service, faster service, or a lot of people are testing next day and same day services. In-store pickup of products that are in the assortment of SKUs that are beyond what that store sells. So I'd be able to ship product to the store and have a customer pick it up in the store, creating more foot traffic. And that ties in with kind of endless aisle. If I see more things that I want outside of the assortment of the store, I have the ability to go right to a kiosk and order it. And then overall making these supply chains more efficient, because now I'm operating in multiple channels. I've got to do a better job of making sure it stays efficient. Next one. And you'll also see that companies are really focusing heavy on the omni-channel, but order management systems. That's become a very critical item for these retailers, is to have a strong order management system connected to a DOM, a distributed order management capability. So now when an order comes into a company, I've got to make a decision of how I want to fulfill that order for that customer. I can leverage my big fulfillment centers. I can leverage all of my stores that I have. I might even leverage my marketplace or the vendor itself to do shipping from the vendor. But I've got to make smart decisions, and I've got to be able to figure that out with different business rules. So when an order comes in, I've got to make decisions about, am I close to the customer with one of my stores? Am I within 50 miles of that store? Have I exceeded the capacity of the orders I've sent to the store? Does that store have the right level of inventory that I want to use to ship to that customer? And then maybe I'll pick that store to ship the customer. Or am I getting a full basket because I don't want to do split orders, which is creating issues? Or I want to do distressed items. Some of these companies have used these DOM systems to be able to search for distressed inventory in their network. And instead of sending it from a fulfillment center that might be close to the customer, they're shipping it from a store that's further away, but they know that that item is going to go on sale next week, and I'm going to lose 25%, 30% of the value anyway, so I'm going to ship it to the customer from that store. So they'll make some smart decisions about how they ship. Other companies are putting RFID in their stores, not so much for things like shrinkage, but they want to be able to understand exactly how many units are in their store, so that if they do a ship from store, they can pick down to the very last unit, because they track it to that level, and then they don't have to have safety stocks and so on. So those are some of the concepts that people are really working, and retailers are pushing in order to get an advantage. The next one. And I think that was it from the slides. So I wanted to just kind of put together high-level slides to be able to maybe tee up a lot of these concepts. And then if you have any questions, we can kind of discuss some of these thoughts around that.
Quite interesting. One thing I think a lot of us is thinking about here in the Nordics is that we are seeing Amazon starting gearing up and pushing it out of Sweden and probably also to the other countries. So is there any views on what is kind of the first wave that we most likely will see impacting our retails here in the Nordics when they go full scope?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question. I think some of it comes down to when people say, how do I compete with Amazon? And the answer is you don't, right? You don't compete with them head on. So if Amazon is selling 100,000 items in the Nordics, and you're selling the same 100,000 items, there's a good chance you're going to lose, right? Because you don't have an advantage. I mean, the advantage is you're there first, but you don't have an advantage in terms of competing with their efficiency. But when you think about advantages, quite often it's the brands. The brands still have power because Amazon does not have access to every brand. So if I own a certain brand, I still have some relevance and to be able to compete against Amazon. Now, what one of the issues happened in the U.S. was a lot of companies started selling their product on Amazon, and that's a great way to increase sales. So you can sell your product on Amazon, but then what Amazon does is they start to learn about that category, and then they very quickly can figure out how to get either competitive products on their platform, or they start developing private label to compete directly with you. And that's how they compete against the brands. I think, but the challenge is that when Amazon comes into a country, they start providing levels of service that country may have not seen in the past. And so now all of a sudden retailers are going to have to start figuring out how to move faster to get product to customers maybe same day and next day.
Do you know if they are going to have that extremely timely home delivery, like you explained, buying something in the morning on a Sunday and getting it in the afternoon? Will they be set up in the Nordics with that same instant delivery capacity?
Probably not in the beginning, right? Because they'll have to set up, their facilities and so on. But what we saw in other countries, like, they'll go into the largest markets. So when they moved into Mexico, they went right into Mexico City, and then they hired a fleet of couriers, or they used crowdsourcing, so they could have a number of these people on scooters being able to deliver products right into Mexico City same day. But when they were going, 100, 200 miles outside of Mexico City, they weren't going to provide that service. So they have very segmented services proposition. So some of it's based on geography. If you live in a certain geography, you're going to get high levels of service. Or if you order certain items, so I might bias certain items to be high levels of service. I don't give you that for all million of my items, but my top 100, yes. Or they'll bias a customer segment. If you're a certain customer, prime customer, I'm going to give you higher levels of service for you being a good customer versus somebody who only buys once or twice.
And do you know more about the categories they're going to start off with? So, for example, are they going to go into food and groceries to begin with?
I don't know where they will go. In the track record in other countries is they usually do not start in food. Because that's more, and grocery, that's a more challenging area. They've done that in other countries, but those tend to be their further back categories, right? So the categories, if you think about in the US, the way they started in books, right? That was the original founder of Amazon. Was they competed purely in books. Then they went into electronics. Then they went into harder merchandise. It took a while for them to move into apparel. After apparel, then they started going into kind of the food and grocery, and now they're all the way back into industrials and all different kind of products you wouldn't even expect them to be in, lab equipment, for example, right? But that's further down. So what we've seen is they've usually picked the simplest. They go after what they're either best at, which is part of their business that's most mature, which would be kind of the basic hard goods of e-commerce, retail. Or they go into the most distressed industries and they try to compete with them because they know those industries can't provide good levels of service. But I think food is much more, and groceries is more complicated than the other categories.
Thank you.
Well, one question about product categories again. How is Amazon thinking about niche products and products where you need to offer a long tail or where you have a large assortment?
Yeah, so I think one of this marketplace strategy has worked out well for them, and I could see them doing that, in the Nordic countries, because the brands that they sell there may be very different, And what they can do is tap into the local market. All right. And so if you see a small mom and pop company selling these certain kind of jackets, Amazon can say, well, you know what, you can, I'll host them on my site and I'll sell those jackets now. So now those jackets are selling at a high levels of service, and they're competing with every other retailer that sells jackets. But they know when they go to Amazon to buy the jackets that are hosted on that site, I can get better service than I can of jackets that are being sold by a different retailer. So when they use that marketplace, they can host anybody that wants to sell products on that marketplace, and they can give those companies very high levels of service. So that's going to be a direct competitor. Now it's a local company. Essentially, it's a local company in the Nordics competing with another local company, but because they're using Amazon as their marketplace to do the fulfillment. Because Amazon uses two different models. One model is as Amazon, I will sell the product on my website, but you as a company can ship it to your customer. I'm just going to pass the order down to you and you can ship it to them. I've never touched the product. I'm just hosting it on my site for you because I can access customers better. The other option is you send me the products that you want me to sell and I'll sell them for you and I'm going to charge you for that. So Amazon is behaving like a 3PL and hosting your products. But to some customers, that's almost they can't. It's not transparent. They just go to Amazon assuming Amazon has all these products.
Have we seen any or heard rumors or seen any activities on Amazon buying retailers like Whole Foods or others in the European space also? Or has it more been domestic, or any views on that?
I'm sorry, can you say that one more time?
In terms of Amazon doing acquisitions like they did with Whole Foods, have you seen them considering acquisitions also in Europe?
I have not seen as much of that in other places. I think that's a challenge for them to make those kind of models work. Sometimes they do that just to be disruptive. And they're not afraid of moving into any decision, whether it's profitable or not. They went out and bought a grocery company like Whole Foods literally overnight without understanding the grocery market. But they didn't care because they knew that would send shock waves. Then they would figure out how they would leverage that. Could they utilize that whole network of just stores and distribution centers to their advantage, or was it just a way to get into a category, right? But that's a very advanced play for them when they do these acquisitions, and they don't necessarily always know how they're going to leverage it, but it works to their advantage. That's not their fastest mover though. This getting into a market with their core products and then getting into a market with marketplaces is probably the fastest move they make.
Yeah.
And the other thing they've done, like if you look at India, they came into India, really shook up the market, but they weren't the first there. Flipkart was the first company there, but Amazon went out and started buying other e-commerce companies in that country to kind of get a better foothold in India. And Walmart came in and bought Flipkart in order to compete with Amazon in India.
Yeah.
How does Amazon benchmark prices? Since there's tons of services online in Sweden, at least, to benchmark prices.
I'm not 100% sure on the pricing. I know there's a lot of sticky things involved in pricing, especially for a marketplace that a lot of customers or retailers that do use Amazon are not happy with. Apparently, they have the ability to dictate certain pricing. If you want to host a product on their site, you can't always control the pricing the way they manage that, and they can keep prices pretty low that way, and then you get a smaller margin on some of those products. So they can be pretty aggressive overall when it comes to pricing. They tend to be pretty competitive against all the other retailers when you look at them from a price standpoint. But their pricing is very different. So you can find an item on Amazon that's that they own, but you can also find that same item being sold by multiple people in the marketplace, and they'll have different prices for the same item. Any other thoughts on Amazon? How are the service levels today in the Nordics? Are they, would you classify them as being kind of top-notch, same day, next day capabilities, or are they further back in terms of overall service levels for retailers?
I would say my experience coming out of Denmark is that within food you can get same day delivery now and then. It's not that often. I'm a little uncertain how it is in Sweden and Norway, but I would say with the sizes of those two countries, if they have it, it's probably mainly in the capital cities because it's so widespread. But maybe Malin Maria from Sweden, you have a view on that?
Yeah, I think it also varies a lot depending on what category you're talking about. So grocery and pharmacies, and you can get fast delivery same day sometimes. Yep. But for other goods, it's longer.
Yeah, yeah. And I don't
think
think Amazon.
Point there, Henrik. I think a point there, Henrik, is Dag. It's very fragmented and it's very non-transparent. So I guess the key asset here for Amazon could be that they could provide this as a one-stop shopping, and it's very transparent on what kind of delivery time you can expect.
Yeah. So I mean, the other thing is that, you know, when Amazon was initially competing, they weren't necessarily always, you know, fast. People just kind of assumed they were fast because a lot of times they were fast, but they weren't fast all the time. But they became sticky, right? Because they had fast service sometimes. They had service on Saturdays. The Prime program gave them free shipping, so I might as well go back. Or if I'm searching for an item, I can always find it on Amazon. So now all of a sudden I'm more apt to go there. You know, when we're other retailers that like brand companies like a Macy's, their whole idea was we'll provide some same day and next day, but we're not going to over index on it because customers want reliability. So we'll promise them 2-day delivery, but we'll always deliver in 2 days at worst case. And when they did that, they had an advantage because, or they were able to compete fairly well because they had good reliability. It's the companies that have poor reliability that really get hurt with Amazon, is because that's where Amazon really cleans up.
We got one question here on the chat as well, Raj, whether retailers should expect shrinking margins overall because of Amazon.
I would say in the long run, yes. I think from two standpoints. One is if Amazon is very competitive in pricing overall and has a pretty good marketplace, that would be one reason to be able to have products that can compete with them. But the other is that your overall supply chain costs may increase if you're trying to compete with them, if you have to start providing a bigger infrastructure network to be able to handle same day and next day services. Can't get away with maybe one facility anymore, where you might have to have multiple facilities in multiple markets and so on, at least on certain products.
Thanks.
Can you elaborate a bit on if you have insights from many big brands, for instance, in the food and beverage space, but if you don't have that, then go beyond. But as to how they perceive the Amazon, do they see it as a threat or as an opportunity, and what are some of the key levers they take actually to live with Amazon?
You mean the food companies?
Yeah.
Or grocery? Yeah, I think most of them are afraid that Amazon would either come in and buy a chain, or they're afraid that Amazon has this ability to do grocery home delivery more effectively than they can, and it could steal their share. That's what we've seen here. So they had Amazon Fresh that was doing home delivery. Then when they brought Whole Foods, that sent shockwaves through the whole grocery industry. And in the U.S. overall, the grocery industry supply chain was not all that efficient when you compared that to, like an apparel a retailer in terms of, or electronic companies, retailers, supply chain much more efficient. They were furthest behind, and that's part of why Amazon wanted to go into grocery, is because they knew that whole supply chain wasn't very mature. It hadn't been reinvented in a very long time.
But my question is more not related to retailers, but from the packaged food players, as to how they perceive the Amazon situation, whether they see it really as a threat or as an opportunity, and what the key levers are that they take.
Yeah, that's a good question. I think it's a little bit of both. What we've seen is, if you're a packaged company, a lot of them will start to sell on Amazon, so they'll see that as an advantage. That's a very fast way to start increasing their sales, right? They can take some of their brands, put it on Amazon, and all of a sudden it's off to the races. But again, the risk was Amazon starts to look at that product and figure out what sells well, what doesn't sell well, and now they start to learn that category, and then very quickly they'll want to move into that category, and that they become a competitor to you, selling like products right on next towards on the same website next to your products. And that's what they did with like Toys R Us. They were doing the fulfillment for Toys R Us for a long time until they learned that industry, and then Amazon then started selling toys on their website, so they were able to compete with that. Was an example of a retailer. Brands are probably a little harder for them to knock off, but they do private label brands that compete directly with the brands that they host. So what companies will do that have brands, sometimes what they'll do is not share the brands that are very important to them. They might share some of their fringe brands on Amazon to get lift in sales, but they know if Amazon knocks them off, they're not so worried. But certain brands they're trying to protect. Certain categories within brands that they try to protect.
See, we have one raised hand.
Yeah,
Maria.
Indeed. Thank you. About the private brands. So what's the learnings of them moving in with their private labels? Is it across all the categories they move in, or you can say, do you have any kind of reflections on that note? And then I have a second question also around the omnichannel. So is it to be expected that they will actually build an omnichannel presence in terms of stores that they have in New York City and so forth, actually creating a physical space? Or how do that dynamic tend to look?
Maybe I'll answer the second one first. So the omnichannel for Amazon hasn't been that mature, right? So they'll put a store in New York, they'll do a pop-up store, they'll put in a mobile van, and nobody really knows why they're doing that. Are they really trying to become an omnichannel player, or are they just trying to be disruptive and try to create a lot of market buzz? Every time they do anything like that, they create a tremendous amount of buzz for something that really didn't matter so much. Like they had these roving vans driving around New York City selling products, or they've got these mini stores that have self-checkout, essentially through cameras. You can literally just walk in, take what you want, and as long as you are an Amazon customer, you just walk out of the store and it knows that you bought it. But they're doing a lot of that as test and shake up. They don't own a lot of assets in terms of stores outside of the few acquisitions. So this is why most retailers and brands have figured out the best way for them to compete is to kind of create that omni-channel experience for a customer, because that's still the leverage that they have, is this combination of stores and e-commerce, really, that's helping the people that are competing with Amazon. And then your first question, if you can repeat that.
Yeah, it was more around, you can say, once they move in, private label wise, as you can say, the Nordics, of course, is a smaller country or market as such. But if you think about the amount of the width of the range that they offer in other markets, what's to be expected from that point of view? Will they come with that full offer, or are we going to see a segmented offer in a market like the Nordics?
It's a segmented offer, but it's almost transparent to the customer. Customer doesn't really know what the what, because the Amazon might have different brands that people want to sell online. They tap into this marketplace, and then they'll start to create private label items. They typically pick items that are a little bit more straightforward. For example, I saw, like fiber gummies or fiber chewy vitamins. The high margins on those products. They're pretty straightforward. So they just went to a co-manufacturer and said, I need you to make me these chewy vitamins. I'll come up with a name for them, and that's just a made up, a private label name. And because I know that that's a really good market for high margin products that are very simple. And the customer doesn't even know it. The customer looks on and says, oh, look at the Salonis brand. That's a cheaper multivitamin. Let me buy that one. And they don't know that's actually an Amazon brand. So they're not picking complex things that require a lot of product development. They're looking for kind of that straightforward commodity item that I can have a contract manufacturer make for me that I can control.
Okay, thank you.
But yeah, they're picking and choosing based on different things, right? The things that are simple, things that have high margins. Another example of that where a lot of people sell those HDMI cords, right? If you buy a TV for a couple $100 these days, you can get an HDMI cord, but that might cost me $50 just for that cord, which is crazy, 70–80% margins on those cords. So Amazon saw that and said, I can have that cord made, very quickly by, somebody in Asia, and I should start selling these HDMI cords for $7. And so they learned very quickly from all these companies that were selling cords on Amazon what that customer profile looked like, what the margins were like, and what actually sold. Never the 50-foot cord, but the 12-foot cord was the best one. So that's all they sell. They go out and they figure out exactly what sells, and then they go out and make that. If it's a commodity product, that's easy for them to handle.
We are going a little over time here, and I do respect that some of you might be dropping off, but if you can stay on a little more, then let's have the last questions online and here in the call. If there's anything else, just pop us into an email to Tia, Elizabeth, or me, then we'll make certain to get back to you. Also, if you're interested in going a little more detail on your specific challenges, we are always happy to come by and have a chat with you. I think I saw one more hand.
Yes, Stefan. Stefan, did you raise your hand on purpose or not?
Yeah, no, it was my purpose. How are they handling sustainability? Have they started to discuss that? Like this? Yeah. What's their view on that?
Yeah, I haven't seen a lot of them advertising sustainability. I'm sure they're doing it like everybody else is, but I haven't seen them really push that. Now, in the U.S., they do have a very large fleet of Amazon vans, and that's the other thing. So they've taken over transportation in the U.S. too. So in the U.S., UPS and FedEx were the two big primary movers. Now Amazon jumped in and created their own trucking fleet, so they took over all of the line haul, and they've done taken over some of the last mile delivery with their own private fleet of vans. You'll see they'll say Amazon on them, and then they've also used crowdsourcing. But I've not heard them really push the sustainability. And you would suspect that's where they would push it the most initially. Would say, we have electric vehicles, for example. There are a lot of companies coming out with electric vehicles, even some of these big startups, the Chinese companies and others, that are coming up with electric vehicles for last mile delivery specifically. I suspect that they would jump on that, but I have not seen them do as much of that.
Yeah. How to reuse or product that they sell. Like that cable that you talked about, how to can we reuse that cable in one way or the other, or can we create a new one out of it? That kind of sustainability as well.
Yeah, somebody else is paying on this. Somebody posted here, right? Amazon pledges to be carbon neutral by 2040. very interesting. I'm not exactly sure what carbon neutral always means, but if it's good. I don't know how you justify being carbon neutral. But I think the part of this is, is with the sustainability, obviously, is to be a good steward of the world. And then the second part of sustainability is to be able to, advertise that to the consumer, that you are that. And so probably the thing that's most visible typically tends to be the last mile delivery. Right? And if you can advertise, electric vehicles, for example, and put that on your truck, that really sends a powerful message to the consumer, makes them feel good. Now, what doesn't make a consumer feel good, and from Amazon's standpoint, is I'll order 4 items and sometimes I will get 4 packages, or I'll get a very small item in a very large package, right? And my immediate reaction isn't, that I got the product fast, is why are they wasting so much packaging, right? And so those are the things that are around sustainability, but those sustainability items that bump up against the consumer, those become the most important.
Cool. I think we'll round it off here in respect of everybody's time. Thank you, Rai.
Okay.
Clearly, you have deep insight, and it's highly appreciated that you took the time. I know it's early morning in your end, but thanks a lot, and thanks for everybody for joining. And we naturally will share the slide, but also please reach out, and we're happy to discuss how it will impact your client and yourself as well. Thank you all.
Thank you, everybody. Bye now.
Thank you very much.